Welcome back, guys. Before we start the video, please hit that subscribe button. Thank you. November 2019, Nevada Test and Training Range. The clock showed 9:47 p.m. Under the dark sky with no moon, the desert stretched out like a dark blanket. There was no wind, no insects. Only the roar of our Humvee's engine broke the silence. Corporal Daniel Cross held the steering wheel steady with both hands, watching the dirt road stretch out ahead of us. The headlights made two yellow cones on the sand, showing nothing but scattered bushes and empty ground. You could drive for hours here and never see another living person. That was exactly what our commanders wanted. I was watching the radio panel from the passenger seat. Corporal Nate Harlow, radio operator. Tonight was routine, like the patrols we'd done for the past 6 months. Check the border sensors, write down the readings, and report back. A simple job, a boring job, a job that kept you nervous until something happened. Private Rick Talbot sat in the back seat, looking through the darkness with his night vision goggles. It had been 3 weeks since he moved here from Fort Irwin. He was quiet. He followed orders without asking questions. That made him perfect for this job. Out here, you learned fast that asking questions got you sent somewhere else. The Nevada Test and Training Range covered thousands of square miles. Most of it looked empty, but every hill, every flat area, every stretch of nothing had sensors buried in the ground, cameras hidden in rocks, equipment you'd never see unless you knew where to look. We patrolled the outer areas, the places not marked on any public map. Our job was to make sure the fences stayed strong and the sensors stayed working. What happened inside those fences? Not our business. Cross slowed the Humvee as we got close to checkpoint Delta 7. A small metal post marked the spot, painted with shiny tape that caught our headlights. He turned off the engine. The silence rushed in like water filling a hole. I stepped out first. The air hit cold and dry, sharp in my throat. The temperature had dropped 10 degrees since sunset. My boots crunched on the hard ground as I walked to the post and checked the sensor box at its base. Green light, steady. No problems. I spoke into the radio. Range control, Delta 7. Checkpoint clear. Sensor normal. Over. Static crackled for a moment before the reply came through. Copy, Delta 7. Move to Delta 8. Report in 15 minutes. Over. Roger. Out. Cross started the engine again and we rolled forward. The track curved northeast, following the bottom of a low hill. Stars filled the sky, thick and bright, without any light from cities for 100 miles. Talbot called out from the back. Sergeant, I've got something on the thermal. Cross didn't slow down. What kind of something? Heat signal. Small. About 200 meters northwest. Looks like an animal. Coyote, maybe. It's not moving. Cross looked at me. I shrugged. Wildlife wasn't unusual, but you wrote down everything, even a coyote. I made a note in the patrol log. Time, location, description. By the time I looked up, Talbot had lost the signal. Gone, he said. Probably just passed behind that rock. We continued. The desert rolled past, endless and flat. The Humvee's engine settled into a steady hum. My mind started to wander the way it does on long patrols. I thought about home, about the base cafeteria coffee, about anything except the empty sand. Then the radio hissed. Not the usual static, something sharper, like a feedback loop trying to fix itself. I tapped the panel. The hiss smoothed out. 5 seconds later, it came back. Radio acting up? Cross asked. A little bit. Probably just air interference out here. Happens sometimes. He didn't look sure, but he didn't argue. We'd both been stationed at Nellis long enough to know that weird things happened in the desert. Radios picked up echoes from distant bases. GPS units stopped working near certain areas. Compasses spun for no reason. The Air Force called it magnetic problems. We called it Tuesday. At 10:03 p.m., we reached the turnoff for Delta 8. Cross took it slow, the Humvee bouncing over loose rocks. The track here was rougher, barely more than tire marks in the sand. Ahead, the ground opened into a wide flat area, flat as a table. The sensor post stood in the center, a dark shape against the stars. Cross stopped about 30 meters out and shut down the engine again. This time the silence felt heavier, thicker, like the air itself had weight. I climbed out and immediately noticed something wrong. The sensor post status light wasn't blinking. It should have been green, pulsing every 5 seconds. Instead, it glowed solid amber. Amber meant standby mode. But these sensors didn't have standby mode. They were either on or off. "Harlow, you seeing this?" Cross joined me, his voice low. "Yeah, amber light. That's not in the manual." Talbot called from the Humvee. "Sarge, my NVG's just cut out. Dead battery." "No. They just stopped. Like someone flipped a switch." Cross and I looked at each other. One malfunction, maybe a coincidence. Two at the same time. That was something else. I pulled out my handheld GPS unit to write down our exact position. The screen flickered. Numbers scrolled too fast to read. Then it froze completely, showing coordinates that put us somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. "GPS is broken," I said. Cross pulled his own unit from his vest. Same result. Flickering screen. Nonsense data. He tried the radio next, pressing the button. "Range control, Delta 7. We've got equipment failure at Delta 8. Multiple systems. Requesting guidance." "Over." Static answered. Not the sharp hiss from before. This was deeper. Rolling like distant thunder. Cross tried again. Same result. He looked at Talbot. "Check the vehicle radio." Talbot climbed into the Humvee and switched channels. I watched his face through the windshield. He shook his head. All communications were down. We were 40 miles from the nearest base in the middle of nowhere with no way to call for help. Cross stayed calm. That's what made him a good sergeant. He'd seen worse. We all had. But this felt different. This felt like someone planned it. "All right," he said. "We write down what we can. Take readings, mark the time. If the equipment comes back online, we report it. If not, we drive back and report in person." I nodded and started toward the sensor post. My flashlight beam cut across the sand, catching nothing unusual. The post looked normal. No damage, no footprints. I bent down beside it and opened the panel. Inside, the circuit board glowed with small LEDs. Everything looked working, but when I checked the data port, the readout showed zeros. No signal, no power use, like the whole system had gone to sleep. That's when Talbot spoke up again. His voice was different now, tighter. "Sarge, you need to see this." Cross and I turned. Talbot stood beside the Humvee, staring at the sky, not at the stars. Something between us and the stars. I followed his gaze and felt my chest tighten. About 1,000 feet up, maybe less. Something blocked out a perfect triangle of stars. No lights, no sound, just a black shape. Huge, silent, drifting slowly from west to east. It moved like it was floating on water, smooth and careful. The edges were sharp, geometric, clearly shaped against the starfield. Each point of the triangle looked exact, almost machine-made. "What the hell is that?" I whispered. Cross didn't answer. He just stared. We all did. The thing passed directly overhead. And as it did, the temperature dropped. Not slowly, instantly. I felt it through my jacket. My breath turned visible. The air smelled different, too. Metallic, like the smell after a lightning strike. My skin prickled. Every hair on my arm stood up. The feeling wasn't fear. Not yet. It was something older. Instinct. The sense that something bigger than you is watching. The craft continued east, moving at maybe 30 miles per hour. No engines, no exhaust, no heat that I could see. Talbot tried his NVGs again. This time they flickered on for a few seconds, long enough for him to get a look. He yanked them off his face like they'd burned him. "Jesus!" "What?" Cross demanded. I don't know. It's like looking at a hole. The thermals can't lock on. It's showing cold. Really cold. Way below normal." I checked my watch. 10:19 p.m. We'd been here 16 minutes. The craft had appeared maybe 2 minutes ago. I forced myself to think. Document. Record. Evidence. I pulled out my phone. No signal, but the camera still worked. I raised it, aimed at the shape, and pressed record. The screen showed the stars clearly, but where the triangle should have been, there was only broken up static, like the camera couldn't understand what it was seeing. "Camera's not picking it up," I said. Cross tried his phone. Same result. The object was there. We could all see it, but no device would capture it. That understanding settled over us like cold water. Whatever this was, it didn't want to be recorded. Or maybe it couldn't be. Maybe it existed in a way that our technology wasn't designed to see. The craft slowed. Then it stopped. Just hung there about 800 feet up, directly above the center of the flat area. We stood frozen. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. I don't know how long we stayed like that. Could have been seconds. Could have been minutes. Time felt stretched, elastic. My heart hammered in my chest, but the rest of me felt numb, detached, like I was watching this happen to someone else. Cross finally broke the silence. "We need to get back to the vehicle." He said it quietly, but with enough edge that we both moved. We backed toward the Humvee slowly, keeping our eyes on the craft. It didn't follow, didn't react, just hovered there, silent and black. When we reached the Humvee, Cross started the engine, turned over once, coughed, and died. He tried again. Same result. Talbot leaned forward from the back seat. "It's draining the battery." "That's not possible," Cross said. But he tried the key one more time anyway. Click. Nothing. The electrical system was dead. Lights out, radio out, everything out. We sat in the dark in a dead vehicle under a craft that shouldn't exist. Cross reached for his sidearm, then stopped. What was he going to do? Shoot at it? That thought almost made me laugh. Almost. But the sound died in my throat because the craft was moving again. Not forward or back. It was coming down, slowly, smoothly, straight down. I watched the stars reappear at its edges as it dropped lower and lower. My hands gripped the door handle, ready to run. But where would I go? The nearest cover was half a mile away. The nearest base was 40 miles. If this thing wanted us, we were already caught. At about 400 feet, it stopped again. Now we could see details. Not the surface. It was still too dark for that. But the shape was clearer. A perfect triangle with 3 equal sides. Each side maybe 200 feet long. The underside was smooth, unbroken. No seams, no panels, no markings, just a flat black surface that seemed to swallow light. And then, at each corner, something began to glow. 3 lights, dim at first like embers. They pulsed in order. Left corner, right corner, rear corner. Left, right, rear. The glow was orange-red, deep and warm, like melted metal. But there was no heat, no sound, just light pulsing with machine-like exactness. Each pulse lasted about 2 seconds. The pattern repeated over and over. Hypnotic. Couldn't look away. "Are we recording this?" Talbot's voice came out shaky. "Nothing's working," I said. "Cameras won't lock on." "Then we remember it. Every detail." Cross nodded. He pulled out a small notebook and started writing by feel, not even looking down. I did the same. Date, time, location, shape, size, lights, behavior. Every observation, no matter how small. This was evidence. Even if no device would capture it, we had our eyes. We had our words. That had to be enough. The craft hung there for what felt like forever. The lights pulsed. The air stayed cold. Nothing else happened. No beams, no sounds, no doors opening. It just watched us if something like that could watch. And we watched back. After a while, maybe 10 minutes, maybe 15, the lights began to fade. The pulses slowed. The glow dimmed. And then, without warning, the craft moved. Not slowly this time. Fast. Impossibly fast. It shot straight up, speeding up in a way that should have created a sonic boom, should have torn the air apart. But there was no sound, no blast, no wind. 1 second it was there. The next it was gone. Vanished into the stars like it had never existed. I blinked. My eyes tried to track it, but there was nothing to track. Just empty sky. Just silence. For a long moment, none of us moved. Then Cross tried the key. The engine roared to life. Lights blazed. The radio crackled with static, then cleared. A voice cut through. "Delta 7, range control. We've lost your signal." Report status. Over. Cross grabbed the mic, his hand shaking slightly. Range control, Delta 7. We're online. Equipment malfunction at Delta 8. Requesting immediate return to base. Over. There was a pause, then. Copy, Delta 7. RTB authorized. Report to debrief upon arrival. Out. Cross dropped the mic and looked at us. His face was pale in the dashboard light. Did that just happen? Yeah, I said. It happened. Talbot leaned back and let out a slow breath. What the hell was that thing? Neither of us answered. We didn't have an answer. Cross put the Humvee in gear and turned us around. We drove back toward the base in silence. My hands were still shaking. I tried to write more notes, but the pen kept slipping. Eventually, I gave up and just stared out the window at the desert rolling past. It looked normal again. Empty. Harmless. But I knew better now. Something was out there, something we weren't supposed to see, and it had let us see it anyway. The drive back felt longer than it should have. Cross kept the Humvee at a steady 50, following the track by GPS now that it worked again. Nobody spoke. The radio stayed on, but range control didn't call. The silence inside the vehicle pressed down like a weight. I kept checking my watch. The numbers moved normally, but time felt wrong, stretched out like we'd spent hours under that craft instead of minutes. Talbot broke the quiet first. Do we tell them everything? Yeah, Cross said. Everything. They're going to think we're crazy. Maybe. But we all saw it. All our equipment failed at the same time. That's documented. The sensor logs will show the malfunction. They can't ignore that. I wasn't so sure. I'd been in the Air Force long enough to know how things worked. Strange events got explained away. Equipment failures got blamed on dust, heat, or user error. And if 3 guys claimed they saw a giant black triangle hovering silently over the desert, that got filed under stress, tiredness, or group hallucination. But Cross was right. We had to report it. What happened after that was out of our hands. At 10:52 p.m., we cleared the outer checkpoint. The guard on duty, a specialist named Jennings, waved us through without comment. He looked bored. I envied him. We continued toward the main compound, a group of low buildings surrounded by fences and floodlights. Most of the base was dark at this hour. Only important personnel worked nights. Range control was in a small concrete bunker near the center. We parked outside and Cross turned off the engine. All right, he said. We go in. We tell them what happened. We answer their questions. We don't guess. We don't make things up. We stick to what we saw. Got it. Talbot and I nodded. We climbed out and walked to the entrance. Cross swiped his ID card. The lock buzzed and the door opened into a narrow hallway lit by fluorescent tubes. The air inside smelled like coffee and electronics. We followed the hall to the watchroom, a cramped space filled with monitors, radios, and tired-looking airmen. The duty officer, Captain Reyes, looked up from his desk. Delta 7, you're early. He checked the clock on the wall. Report said equipment malfunction. Yes, sir, Cross said. Multiple systems went down at checkpoint Delta 8. GPS, radio, NVGs, vehicle electronics, everything. Reyes frowned. All at once. Yes, sir. That's unusual. Did you check the sensor post? We did. It showed amber status. No data transmission. Reyes typed something into his computer. I'm pulling the logs now. Delta 8 sensor went offline at 10:04 p.m., came back at 10:41 p.m., 37 minutes. He looked up. What happened during that time? Cross glanced at me, then back at Reyes. We observed an unidentified aerial object. Sir. The room went quiet. The other airmen stopped what they were doing and turned to listen. Reyes leaned back in his chair, his face neutral. Describe it. Cross walked him through it. The shape, the size, the lights, the movement. He kept his voice steady, matter-of-fact, like he was reporting any other patrol event. Reyes listened without interrupting. When Cross finished, Reyes looked at me. Corporal Harlow, you confirm this account? Yes, sir. Every detail. Private Talbot? Yes, sir. Reyes nodded slowly. He typed more notes, then picked up a phone. "Get me Colonel Marsh. I don't care if he's asleep. Wake him." He waited. Someone answered. "Sir, it's Reyes. We have a situation. Delta 7 Patrol reported a UAP encounter at checkpoint Delta 8. Yes, sir. All 3 personnel confirm. I'll send them to debrief." He hung up and looked at us. "You're going to Building 6. Colonel Marsh wants to talk to you personally. Go now. Don't discuss this with anyone else." We left range control and walked across the compound. Building 6 sat at the far edge, separated from the others by a wide stretch of pavement. No windows, no signs, just a number painted on the door. I'd been past it 100 times and never seen anyone go in or out. Tonight, the door was open. A woman in civilian clothes waited inside. No name tag, no rank. She motioned for us to follow. The interior was clean. White walls, white floors, fluorescent lights that buzzed faintly. She led us down a corridor and into a conference room. A long table, 6 chairs, a digital recorder in the center. The woman told us to sit and wait. Then she left, closing the door behind her. We sat. The room was cold. I rubbed my hands together and tried not to think about how this looked. 3 enlisted guys in a classified building waiting to explain something impossible. This could go bad. Really bad. 10 minutes later, the door opened. Colonel Marsh walked in. He was older, maybe 55, with gray hair and sharp eyes. He wore a flight suit, no jacket. Behind him came 2 more civilians, 1 man, 1 woman. Both carried tablets. They didn't introduce themselves. Marsh sat at the head of the table and turned on the recorder. "This conversation is classified. What's said here doesn't leave this room. Understood?" "Yes, sir," we answered together. "Good. Sergeant Cross, walk me through your patrol from the beginning." Cross did. He started with our departure at 9:47 p.m. and covered every checkpoint, every observation, every detail. When he reached the Delta 8 encounter, he slowed down. He described the equipment failures first, then the craft. Marsh listened without showing emotion. The 2 civilians took notes. When Cross finished, Marsh turned to me. "Corporal Harlow, the sergeant's account matches yours?" "Yes, sir. Exactly. Did you see any markings on the craft? Any text or symbols?" "No, sir. The surface was plain, completely smooth." "Did you hear any sound? Any vibration?" "No, sir. It was silent." "What about the lights? You said they pulsed. Can you show me the pattern?" I thought for a moment, then tapped the table with my finger. "Left, right, rear. Left, right, rear." 2-second gaps. Marsh watched. The civilians watched. Nobody said anything. Then Marsh looked at Talbot. "Private, you observed this through night vision. What did you see?" Talbot swallowed. "The thermal couldn't lock on, sir. It showed cold, below normal, like the thing was absorbing heat instead of giving it off." "How long did the observation last?" "I'm not sure, sir. Maybe 10 minutes, maybe more." Marsh nodded. He looked at the civilians. One of them, the man, leaned forward. "Did any of you experience physical symptoms during the encounter? Headaches? Nausea? Dizziness?" "No," Cross said. "We felt cold. The temperature dropped, but nothing else." "Did you feel observed? Like something was aware of you?" That question hung in the air. I glanced at Cross. He met my eyes. We both knew the answer. "Yes," I said. "It felt aware." The man made a note. The woman spoke next. Her voice was calm, professional. "Did the craft make any attempt to communicate? Any sounds, patterns, or signals?" "No," Cross said. "It just hovered. Then it left." "How did it leave?" "Fast. Straight up. No sound. No visible propulsion." "And your equipment came back online immediately after?" "Within a minute, yes." Marsh leaned forward. "Gentlemen, what you observed tonight is not unique. We've had similar reports from other patrols in this area. Always at night, always in remote places. The objects match your description. Triangular, silent, fast. We don't know what they are. We don't know where they come from. What we do know is that these encounters are classified at the highest level. You will not discuss this with anyone. Not your friends, not your families, not other personnel on this base. If you're asked about tonight, you experienced equipment failure. That's all. Do you understand? Yes, sir, we said. Good. You're going to sign non-disclosure agreements. They'll be processed tonight. After that, you'll return to your quarters. Tomorrow, you'll go back to normal duties. This conversation never happened. The patrol report will say equipment malfunction and nothing else. Questions? I had 1,000 questions. So did Cross and Talbot. But we didn't ask them. You don't question colonels. You don't question civilians in classified buildings. You nod, you sign, you move on. That's how it works. One of the civilians pulled out 3 identical documents. We read them. Standard NDA language. Penalties for telling. Legal consequences. I signed. Cross signed. Talbot signed. The civilians collected the papers and left without a word. Marsh stood. You did good work tonight. You followed the rules. You wrote down what you saw. That matters. But from this moment forward, you forget it. Understood? Yes, sir. Dismissed. We left Building 6 and walked back across the compound. The sky was starting to get lighter in the east. Dawn wasn't far off. None of us spoke until we reached the barracks. Cross stopped outside and looked at us. We don't talk about this. Not to each other. Not to anyone. It's done. Roger that, Talbot said. I nodded. Cross went inside. Talbot followed. I stood there for a moment, looking up at the stars. They were fading now, washed out by the coming light. Somewhere up there, that craft was still flying. Or maybe it was back on the ground. Or maybe it was somewhere we couldn't imagine. I didn't know. I probably never know. I went to my bunk, pulled off my boots, and lay down. My mind kept replaying the encounter. The shape, the lights, the silence. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw that triangle against the stars. At 6 o'clock, wake-up call sounded. I dragged myself out of bed and went through the motions. Shower, uniform, breakfast. Everything normal. In the dining hall, I saw Cross and Talbot. We nodded at each other but didn't sit together. We kept our distance. That was smarter, safer. After breakfast, I reported to my duty station. The day dragged. Nothing happened. Nobody mentioned the patrol. By 5 p.m., I was off duty. I went back to my quarters and found a sealed envelope on my bunk. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Reassignment orders. Effective in 2 weeks, I was being transferred to Nellis. Different unit, different area. I stared at the paper. It wasn't a coincidence. They were moving me. Cross and Talbot probably got the same orders. Spread us out. Keep us separate. Make sure the story stayed buried. I folded the paper and put it in my drawer. Then I pulled out my patrol notebook. I flipped to the pages from last night. My handwriting was shaky, rushed, but readable. I read through the notes. Everything was there. The time, the shape, the lights, the silence. I tore the pages out carefully, folded them, and tucked them into my wallet. The rest of the notebook I left as it was. If anyone ever checked it, they'd find routine entries. Nothing unusual, nothing classified. Over the next 2 weeks, I didn't see Cross or Talbot. I heard Talbot shipped out to Germany. Cross went to a base in Alaska. I ended up at Nellis, assigned to a supply unit. Boring work. No patrols, no deserts, no checkpoints. Just paperwork and supply runs. I told myself it was better this way, safer. But I couldn't stop thinking about that night. Every time I saw a plane overhead, every time I heard a jet engine, I thought about the silence. How something that big could move without a sound. How it could hover without effort. How it could vanish without a trace. Months passed, then a year. I stayed at Nellis, did my job, kept my head down. I made a few friends, but I never got close. I didn't talk about my past assignments. When people asked where I'd been stationed, I kept it vague. Just said I'd done patrol work in Nevada. That was enough. Most people didn't care. They had their own stories, their own secrets. That's how the Air Force worked. Everyone knew something they couldn't talk about. One night, I was off base, sitting in a bar on the edge of Las Vegas. The place was quiet, just a few locals and some tired-looking airmen. I was drinking a beer, watching a muted TV, when someone sat down next to me. I glanced over. It was Cross. He looked older, thinner. He ordered a drink and didn't say anything for a minute. Then, quietly, "You still think about it?" I didn't need to ask what he meant. "Every day." "Me too." "You ever see it again?" "No. But I feel it sometimes. Like it's still out there. Watching." I nodded. We sat in silence for a while. Then Cross finished his drink, stood up, and left. I never saw him again. But that moment stayed with me. The knowing look, the unspoken understanding. We'd both seen something we weren't supposed to see, something that changed the way we looked at the sky. And we'd both learned to live with it, carrying the weight of that night in silence. Years went by. I finished my time in the military and got out. Civilian life was strange at first. No uniforms, no orders, no structure. I moved to a small town in Utah, got a job at a hardware store, and tried to build something normal. Most days I succeeded. I went to work. I paid my bills. I talked to neighbors about the weather. But some nights, when the sky was clear and the stars were bright, I'd go outside and look up, and I'd remember. The thing about seeing something like that is it never really leaves you. It's not like a bad dream that fades over time. It's more like a scar. You can ignore it for a while, but it's always there, just under the surface. I tried to move on. I told myself it was over, but deep down I knew better. What we saw that night wasn't a one-time thing. It was part of something bigger, something ongoing. In 2022, I started hearing rumors. Not official reports, not news stories, just whispers. People on forums talking about strange sightings in Nevada. Triangular crafts, silent movement, lights that pulsed in order. The descriptions matched what we'd seen. I followed the threads, read the accounts, and realized we weren't alone. Other people had seen it, too. Civilians, hikers, truckers driving through the desert at night. All of them described the same thing. A black triangle. No sound, no heat. Just there and then gone. I reached out to a few of them through secret accounts, asked questions, compared details. Most of them were real. A few were probably making things up. But some knew things they couldn't have known unless they'd really been there. One guy, a retired truck driver, described the lights exactly as I remembered them. Left, right, rear. 2-second pulses. He said he'd seen it in 2018, about 50 miles north of Groom Lake. Same area, same craft. I asked him if he'd reported it. He said he tried, but nobody listened. Local sheriff told him it was probably a military test. Maybe it was, but that didn't explain the silence. It didn't explain the speed. In 2023, the government released some UAP footage. Grainy videos from Navy pilots showing objects that moved in ways physics shouldn't allow. The media went crazy. Everyone had an opinion. Doubters said it was sensor errors. Believers said it was proof of alien life. I watched the videos and didn't say anything. What we saw wasn't on any video. It was in our memories, in our notes, in the nightmares that still woke me up at 3 a.m., heart pounding, skin cold. One afternoon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. The voice on the other end was familiar. Talbot. We hadn't spoken in 5 years. He asked if we could meet. Said he had something to show me. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to hang up and forget it. But part of me needed to know. We agreed to meet in a diner in Nevada, halfway between where we both lived. I drove out 2 days later. The diner was small, old, the kind of place truckers stop for coffee and pie. Talbot was already there, sitting in a booth by the window. He'd changed. Hair longer, face harder. But his eyes were the same. Tired. Haunted. We shook hands and sat down. For a minute we just looked at each other. Then he pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. "I've been collecting these," he said. I opened the folder. Inside were printouts, dozens of them. Reports from other military personnel, sighting logs, incident summaries. All of them described triangular crafts, silent movement, rapid speed. The locations changed. Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, California. But the descriptions were identical. Talbot tapped one of the pages. This one's from 2021. Marine Patrol near Yuma. 3 guys. Same equipment failures, same craft. They reported it. Got the same treatment we did. NDAs, reassignments, silence. Where'd you get these? Contacts. People who still work on base. People who got out and can't let it go. He leaned forward. We're not crazy. We're not alone. This thing, whatever it is, has been flying over the Southwest for years, maybe decades. And they know about it. They've always known. Then why keep it secret? Because they can't explain it. They can't control it. And they don't want the public to panic. I looked at the reports again. So many people. So many encounters. All of them hidden, all of them filed away and forgotten. I felt anger rise in my chest. Not at Talbot, not at the other witnesses. At the system that buried the truth, that silenced people for asking questions, that treated honest observations like threats. What do you want to do with this? I asked. I don't know. Part of me wants to go public, post it online, let people decide for themselves. But the other part, he trailed off. The other part knows what happens to people who talk. Yeah. We sat there for a long time. The waitress brought coffee. We drank it slowly, not saying much. Eventually, Talbot gathered up the folder and put it back in his bag. He stood to leave, then paused. Cross reached out to me last year. Said he was working on something. A way to track the sightings, map them, find a pattern. He wanted to meet, but then he stopped responding. I tried calling. Nothing. I went to his last known address. Neighbors said he moved. No forwarding information. You think something happened to him? I think he got too close to something they didn't want him to see. That thought stayed with me long after Talbot left. I drove back to Utah, parked in my driveway, and sat in the truck for an hour, staring at nothing. Cross had always been the careful one, the smart one. If he disappeared, it wasn't by accident. Someone had made sure he stopped asking questions. And if they did that to him, they could do it to any of us. I went inside, pulled out my old patrol notes, and read them again. The ink had faded, the paper was yellowed, but the words were still clear. I thought about burning them, destroying the evidence, making it like that night never happened. But I couldn't. Those notes were proof. Not just of the craft, but of the truth. That we'd seen something. That we'd reported it. That we'd been silenced. If I destroyed them, I'd be helping with the cover-up. And I wasn't ready to do that. Instead, I made copies, scanned them, saved them to a flash drive, hid the drive in a safe place. If anything ever happened to me, someone would find it. Someone would know. It wasn't much, but it was something. Months later, I was watching the news when a story caught my attention. A commercial pilot had reported seeing a triangular craft over Oregon. The FAA investigated, found nothing. The pilot was grounded for mental health evaluation. I recognized the pattern immediately. See something? Report it. Get punished. The message was clear. Keep your mouth shut. Pretend it didn't happen. Move on. But how could you move on when the thing you saw changed everything you thought you knew about the world? I started keeping a journal. Not just about that night, but about everything I'd learned since. The rumors, the reports, the patterns. I wrote it all down just like I'd been trained to do. Document everything. Trust the process. But the process had failed us. The system designed to protect truth had become a tool for hiding it. And I was just one more victim, carrying a secret I could never prove and couldn't forget. One night, I drove back out to the Nevada desert. Not to the test range. I couldn't get near that. But to a place nearby, a stretch of open land where you could see for miles. I parked, got out, and looked at the sky. It was clear, cold. The stars were brilliant. I stood there for hours, scanning the darkness, waiting. Part of me hoped I'd see it again. The triangle, the lights, the impossible silence. Part of me hoped I wouldn't, because if I saw it again, I'd have to accept that it was real, that it was still out there, that it hadn't been a hallucination or a trick of the light or some secret military test. Nothing appeared. The sky stayed empty. The desert stayed quiet. I drove home as the sun came up, feeling foolish and relieved in equal measure. Maybe it was over. Maybe that one night was all there was. But deep down, I knew better. Something that advanced, that deliberate, doesn't just disappear. It's still flying, still watching, still operating outside the limits of what we understand. I think about Cross sometimes. Wonder if he's still out there chasing answers, or if they found him and made sure he stopped. I think about Talbot collecting his reports, trying to make sense of it all. And I think about everyone else who's seen what we've seen and been told to forget it. How many of us are there? Hundreds? Thousands? All of us walking around with the same secret, the same weight, the same knowledge that the world isn't what we've been told it is. The truth is, I don't have answers. I don't know what that craft was. I don't know who built it or where it came from or why it was over that desert on that specific night. Maybe it was ours, some black project too secret for even the military to admit. Maybe it was something else, something foreign, something unknown. I'll probably never know. But what I do know is that I saw it. We all saw it. And no amount of NDAs or reassignments or official denials can change that. Last year, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. It showed a dark shape against a starry sky. Triangular, clear, unmistakable. On the back, someone had written a date and coordinates. I looked them up. The date was 3 weeks ago. The location was southern Arizona, near the border. Someone else had seen it. Someone else had proof. And they'd sent it to me. The photograph was different from anything I tried to capture that night. This one was clear, sharp. The triangle stood out against the stars like it had been cut from black paper. The edges were exact, mathematical. Each corner showed the same faint glow we'd seen. That deep orange-red pulse, frozen in time. I held it up to the light. Real photo paper, not a printout. Someone had developed this in a darkroom. Someone who knew what they were doing. I studied it for hours that first night, looking for clues. The star pattern in the background might tell me the exact time. The angle might show the height. But more than that, I searched for something that would explain why this person had sent it to me specifically. My name wasn't on any public record. My address wasn't listed anywhere that connected to the patrol. Yet somehow this photograph had found me. The coordinates led to a stretch of desert near Sasabe, Arizona. I pulled it up on satellite maps. Empty land. No towns, no bases. Just scrub and sand. The same as Nevada. I checked weather reports from that date. Clear skies, new moon. The same conditions we'd experienced. Whoever took this photo had been in the right place at the right time. Or maybe they'd been tracking it. Maybe they knew where to look. A week later, I got another package. Same blank envelope, same lack of return address. Inside was a USB drive. Nothing else. No note, no explanation. I almost didn't plug it in. You don't just connect unknown drives to your computer, especially when you're dealing with classified material and possible watching. But curiosity won. I used an old laptop not connected to the internet and opened the drive. Contained a folder. Inside were documents. Dozens of them. Incident reports from military and civilian sources. Pilot testimonies. Radar logs showing objects moving at impossible speeds. Photographs similar to the one I'd received. All triangular crafts. All showing the same features. Silent movement, rapid speed, electromagnetic interference. The files were organized by date and location, going from 1989 to the present year. Someone had been collecting this information for decades. Someone with access to restricted databases and classified reports. Someone who was now sharing it with me. At the bottom of the folder was a text file. Contained a single sentence. You were not the first. You will not be the last. They know. You know. I read that line 20 times. Each time it felt heavier. They know. You know. Who were they? The military, the intelligence agencies, or something else? Something connected to the craft itself? The idea that we might be monitored, tracked, identified as witnesses made my skin crawl. But it also made sense. If these encounters were being documented, if there was a system in place to handle them, then of course they'd keep track of the witnesses. Make sure we stayed quiet. Make sure we didn't connect with each other. I thought about Cross again. How he'd stopped responding. How he'd disappeared without explanation. Maybe he'd received the same packages. Maybe he'd dug too deep. Maybe asking the right questions had put him on someone's radar in a way that couldn't be ignored. The thought made me nervous. For weeks afterward, I checked my rearview mirror constantly, watched for strange cars on my street, paid attention to people who seemed to appear too often in the same places I went. Nothing obvious happened, but the feeling never left. That sense of being observed, of invisible eyes tracking my movements, of some huge system quietly taking notes. I don't know who sent those packages. I don't know why they chose me. Maybe they'd found my name on an old report. Maybe they were reaching out, trying to connect with someone who'd understand. Or maybe they were warning me, reminding me that it's still out there, still flying, still watching. And reminding me that they were watching, too. I keep the photo now, tucked in my wallet next to my old patrol notes. 2 pieces of evidence. 2 fragments of a truth the world doesn't want to admit. I don't know what I'll do with them. Maybe nothing. Maybe one day I'll find the courage to share them, to add my voice to the others who've been silenced. But for now, I just hold them. Proof that what happened that night in the Nevada desert was real. That Sergeant Daniel Cross, Private Rick Talbot, and I, Corporal Nate Harlow, saw something we weren't supposed to see. And that will carry it with us for the rest of our lives. The desert never forgets. And neither do we. Some nights, when the air is still and the stars are bright, I step outside and look up. I scan the darkness. I listen for the silence. And I wonder if it's up there right now, drifting over some other patrol, revealing itself to some other group of people who will be told to forget. The cycle continues. The secret holds. And those of us who know watch the sky and wait. Because one day the truth will come out. Maybe not in my lifetime. Maybe not in any of our lifetimes. But eventually enough people will see it. Enough people will speak up. Enough evidence will surface. And when that day comes, everyone will finally understand what we've known all along. We are not alone in these skies. And what flies above us is beyond anything we've been told to believe. If you're still watching, if this story gave you chills, then you know what to do. Subscribe because there are more secrets buried in the dark. More witnesses with stories they can't tell. More nights when the impossible becomes real. And we'll keep bringing them to you one story at a time. The next one is waiting on your screen. Don't look away now.